70% of your immunity comes from your gut.
Yeah, that's
right.
wild.
So like mostly for people who want to just stay healthy and fit, you should actually be taking probiotics and looking after your gut health. Serotonin, to your point, like about just under 90% of your serotonin is made in your gut
It's
as
that
well.
much, is it?
It's
Wow.
that much. So, and the gut-brain axis communicates like everything. That's why you get butterflies in your tummy. That's what, all of these things. And talk
Follow
about
your gut as well.
follow your gut instinct and stuff. What's really interesting about that, for anyone that's ever felt they have an intuition on something, they've taught themselves out of it, your gut reacts to everything considerably faster than your brain does. So the feelings of things come from your gut and they enter your mind, and then when they enter your mind, you then go through the mental processing and negativity bias that we all have as cognitive bias to talk yourself out of the thing. So your gut says X, most people don't listen to that and don't follow their intuition, and then they sit and they ruminate for ages. They go through analysis paralysis and they talk themselves out of the thing that actually was potentially a good idea. So the more that science demonstrates, I mean, these are facts, by the way, that's not like my opinion, the more that we can sort of pay attention to what our gut has said, and then times we've talked ourselves out of it. It's almost like if we could keep track of these things and figured out the times when we actually then listened to our mind and went a different way to our gut and it didn't work out well to us, you'd build up more confidence of just listening to your gut. But the intuition stuff, I mean, it's all ancient and completely being proven by like modern imagery scans. It's so interesting.
Do you know what's really interesting? I would say historically I have never followed my gut. Like you get like you said, you described like butterflies, and like even when you're dating people, right, you get the butterflies and or the anxiety and or like the whatever of that manifestation you get. I feel like we are trained, societally or whatever, to not listen to that and like to process things with your head.
Definitely.
And actually I've become, I would say, a better friend, a better mother, a better leader, all of those things in the last 6 months, because I've went through this journey of I need to start listening to my gut more and following what my gut says. And if my gut says this isn't right, don't question it. Like ask questions after, but like listen to what my body's telling me. And that's made a huge difference to my mental health. I think I'm the happiest now that I've ever been in my entire adult life. And I don't say that with like, a lack of conviction. Like I genuinely, the last couple of years have been a real fucking roller coaster.
What, and all because you've been listening to your gut more, or?
Yeah, like even little things about food. So I came across Davinia Taylor, who I'm sure you're aware of, who used to be an it girl. Now she's like, a very well-known, I don't know what you call her, like nutritional warrior, I guess. Yeah, biohacker is probably the best way to describe her. And she's very anti ultra processed, anti, eating things that have not come almost directly from animal or farm. And I came across her when I was on holiday recently. I met a couple and we started talking. Our kids were the same age and they were playing or whatever. And the wife was saying, I used to have all these like insomnia and like I couldn't concentrate at work and all this kind of stuff, and I discovered this woman, Davinia Taylor, and she sort of passed this knowledge on to me, and I was like, interesting. So I started kind of researching her and reading about her and bought some of the products that she sells for Will Powders, which is her brand. And within, I would say, about 3 weeks of following the like program or whatever it was that she kind of set out, which is like collagen, certain supplements, avoiding this, that, and the other thing. If you're going to eat wheat, eat sourdough, whatever. The difference I had to my brain fog, which I didn't even realize I had until I didn't have it. The difference I had to my sleep quality as well. Like I don't sleep a lot. I probably sleep like 5-6 hours a night, but the quality was like 46%, 45%. Now it's like 90. So it's the same amount of sleep, but I'm getting such a deeper sleep, and it's been quite life-changing actually. Quite life-changing.
It's funny though, because you say these things and you have these epiphanies, and then you realize in the post-rationalization period, it's really obvious.
Yeah.
It is just really obvious. So if you think about the thing that you do more than anything else, it's eating for most people, right? You're going to do it 2-3 times a day, maybe more.
More life revolves around food.
Right. And if what you're putting into your body is actually not that good for you. But the problem is we don't know that it's not good for us. That's the thing that sort of changed.
Until you look at the labels.
If you look at the labels
in America.
Well, that's the thing. If you turn around any normal thing that you'd be buying and there's 20 ingredients on there, you know it's junk. But you don't know it's junk. And there's a great line in ultra-processed people that's if anything has a health claim on it, it's not healthy.
Yeah.
When's the last time an apple had a health claim on it? Does a steak have a health claim on it? You ever seen a health claim on vegetables? It's like whole food, things that are good for you, they don't need health claims, they don't have them. So as soon as one's on there, run for your life. And it's like, or just eat it and be consciously aware that it's not, and that's the thing. Like learning about this stuff was really, really interesting for me, and I absolutely loved it. And I felt like there was a big gap in the education space between mental health and gut health information, and sort of translating that out of science and out of like the medical area and into layman's terms for people basically as thick as you and me. And so I was like, I'm going to start a newsletter. Because I don't like, I wasn't on social media much at that time. So I was kind of allergic to influencers and that kind of vibe. And I was like, well, who do I respect? I don't respect them. I do respect scientists and medical professionals. I'm going to read PubMed, which is short for Public Medical Journal. Terrible name. It just sounds like a boozer.
PubMed, yes,
and all doctors are obviously drunk all the time as well, so it doesn't even help. But, I'm going to read PubMed every single week, and I'm going to look for scientific studies that talk about the impact of nutrition on your mental health and your gut health. Gut health's a lot more obvious, as in, it's easy logic to anyone that what you eat will impact your gut health, right? That's common, but that it would impact your mental health and that those two things are interlinked is pretty rare. And so I was like, that's a really interesting space for me. I'm going to start writing a newsletter about it. So in 2018, I just started writing a newsletter. My mum signed up, and then a week later, like 5 more people signed up. And then, over a period of time, over the year, I was writing this newsletter. And I was tagging these really amazing, so I was sharing it on Twitter.
Is this before you founded the business, or is this?
This is like kind of the start of the business.
Right.
Like I called it Dawn because I didn't have a better name. And then I went to America to do some market research on like what we should do with my business partner. And then like day one out there, we're staying in like an Airbnb, and like their version of Fairy Liquid is called Dawn. And I was like, well, I guess we won't be getting that trademark. So I was like, okay, we're going to have to change the name. And then we went through a process where we came to Heights, which pretty much was a case of like, what trademarks could we possibly get with a cool name? But we were writing this newsletter as Dawn for a year. And then we switched it to Heights, and then we launched the product in January 2020, having built a newsletter audience up to 45,000 people organically over the course of, I'd say, 16, 17 months. So like up until that point, all I'd been doing is writing this newsletter. I'd been tagging, like I said, I've been tagging really impressive people into it, and I had lots of really respectable scientific professionals reading it and enjoying it, right? Because they're like, oh yeah, you're right, this is a problem. It is a problem that there's the science, it's really interesting, but no one's making it like clear and easy to understand in like a simple digest. So my whole thing was like, had lots of like witty taglines, but one of them was like, don't waste time with science, I'll do that for you. Everything you need to know about nutrition and your brain, or everything you need to know about nutrition and your gut this week in under 3 minutes in your inbox on Sunday. So it's a really light read, but always link back to the science paper. And so my process was awesome as well, because it's like, I have really bad imposter syndrome when I go into a new category, but as an entrepreneur, I always do that. Every single new thing I've ever started has been a completely different category to the last. So I'll never achieve mastery in anything, because I'd rather start from bottom and be a complete student again. Like I much prefer that process, but I do get imposter syndrome with it. And in science, I was a bit like, right, I don't have any degree in science. I'm not a PhD. I'm no one, right? And I already don't trust those people, so I shouldn't be trying to pretend something I'm not, right? However, I was like, if all I do is read a science paper and recommunicate it, actually I'm a communicator. And that's okay. People don't mind that, so long as what I'm saying isn't my opinion. It just comes from a science paper that I've linked to. So that process really worked, and it helped me bring on board brilliant people. So the first person we ever worked with was Dr. Tara Swart, who's like now a world famous neuroscientist. She was pretty famous. She had a book, and I'd quoting her in my newsletters and stuff. But we met up in Soho, and she was like, I love the newsletter, I read it every week, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I love your work, I think it's amazing. I did like a whole newsletter on one of her books. And she started telling me about what she gives her clients. And it was like this concoction of supplements. And I was like, that's really interesting. Tell me more about that. So I learned she has a PhD in neuropharmacology, which is basically what nutrients your brain needs as a PhD. And we got talking about what that could be in a product. And if she was going to put her name on a product as chief science officer, what would it need to be? If we promised to take no corners, like everything. So we ended up with this exceptionally unique looking product, right? Where the omega-3s on the outside, the vitamins inside it, like that's a patented capsule. that had been tested to the nth degree, because she was like, it would need to have fat in it. And you always have to take your omegas separately. And is there a way of getting them together? Because if you could, they'd be more bioavailable, it'd get into your bloodstream faster. You wouldn't have to, you could have them on a fasted stomach, all of this stuff. Yeah, she was like, that'd be the ideal. So we were like, gosh, what diva, it's a long list of bloody requirements here, but okay.
Try and make it work.
Exactly. And actually, funny enough, we started working with a lady called Sophie Medlin, who's like really well known now as she's been a gut health dietitian for 15 years. Saying she's famous now is a bit harsh, but she was basically, there's a Channel 4 show called Know Your Shit, and she was the main dietitian on that. So she was like the leading gut health dietitian researcher on that. And she's the head of nutrition. But at the time, I did exactly the same thing with a probiotic. So we want to launch a probiotic. We thought we were going to launch them together. That probiotic took 3 years to bring to market.
I remember when we first met, you gave me some.
Yeah.
And it was before you'd launched it.
Oh, was it?
Great,
yeah. So that's the thing.
Very pro-probiotic.
That product took 3 years to bring to market. And the reason is because Sophie was like, the number one, the difference between vitamins need to get in your bloodstream. A probiotic has to make it all the way through to your colon. And to do that, it's got to get through your large intestine, small intestine, super acidic. Yeah, exactly. So the process there was actually creating an acid-resistant capsule and being able to prove it in what's called in vivo labs and in vitro labs, which means in human and in lab studies, that more of the bacteria that we were bringing in got to your colon alive than any other product. And Sophie was basically like, we agreed that you wouldn't bring out a product with my name on it unless we could prove that. So that one took 3 years because the amount of times we tried to bring it out and we couldn't prove it meant that we couldn't bring it out. So it was actually awesome. Like, you know, I often say like the 3 things we did at the start that made it really hard for us, but actually long-term incredible brand moats. One, we were like, we're a B Corp from day one. That like helped set a map of all the, you know, ethical choices that you make and everything else, diversity, hiring and what you pay people and the factories that you use and all of the things without having to figure it all out yourself. And working with Sophie and working with Tara, because every single one of those decisions made our life immediately harder and made us have to be a lot more patient. But long term, like years later, that's actually kind of the thing that's really helping us grow now, is like we haven't cut any corners. And so, you know, medical professionals recommend our product. We just signed up, you know, our first professional sports team, the Ireland men's rugby team.
Amazing.
Like we're actually working like really closely now with the UK Sports Institute, who look after like all the nutrition programs for the F1, football, rugby, cricket, tennis. It all goes through UK Sports Institute. And so we're now getting to that point where we have enough data and research and evidence that when we have conversations with them about probiotics, for example, they're like, yeah, you have the most evidence of, so, you know, we're now using all that stuff to like break down doors we couldn't get elsewhere, but they take years.